Good morning. Welcome to CSLDallas Science Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra Weldis, and we are in the chapter of faith on the Science Mind textbook. And we are on page, wherever we are, but 157. But I have to warn you that I'm now going to skip sections, okay? We're going to skip the rest of the section we were in, Understanding Faith, and we're going to skip the section on no confusion. The reason for this is because in these sections, what do we want to say? The rationale and the support for what Ernest Holmes is talking about in these sections is all biblical, from the Hebrew Bible. And that's great, except that it is still only one of the world's scriptures. And we use the Science of Mind text as opposed to the Bible as our source text, which is always a really interesting conversation, is to ask ourselves, what is our source text? So we live in a Judeo-Christian culture, and people will tell you that the source texts for the Judeo-Christian culture are the Bible, the works of Plato and Aristotle, and Shakespeare. And those are the underpinnings of so many of our beliefs, our aphorisms, the way in which we see the world in the Western culture. If we were in the East, our source texts would be very different. They would be the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, the Hindu tradition, in Lao Tzu, Confucius, in China, in Japan. We would have our source text would be Shinto and the indigenous traditions all over the world, right? So we have African spirituality. There's so many kinds of spiritualities. When we are consistently focusing on the biblical text as proof, it continues to make the biblical text primary, as if it's more proof or better proof. So Ernest Holmes was writing in the 1920s, 1930s, when the U.S. was less multicultural and multi-religious than it is today. In that date just came and went right out of my brain. In the late 1800s was the first time the Parliament of the World Religions was held in Chicago, and Krishnamurti was invited to speak. And it's the first time the Hindu tradition was actively spoken, actively presented into the West, or certainly into the Americas. And it was based on the fact that in the mid-1800s, what they called at the time Orientalism became a fad. That's when people began having lots of Oriental, they wanted Ming vases and lots of Oriental kinds of decorations, because it was the first time it was really starting to show up, especially for the middle class in the U.S. And so while we draw our line through transcendentalism back to the teachings of Jesus and Plato in the West, there's a huge Eastern tradition, Eastern influence in the science of mind. And so because I found science of mind so very early, I was 17 when I found the science of mind, and while I was had catechism and all of that in the Roman Catholic Church. We were not particularly Catholic in my regular life at home. So my personal source text is actually the Science of Mind. That's where all of my awakening really was developed. And so I don't find it useful to quote scripture, biblical scripture, as corroboration for truth. Now, absolutely understand that the teachings of Jesus is different than simply quoting biblical scripture. And a lot of what he's doing here is the Hebrew stories as a way of saying these people had faith and they demonstrated because they had faith, and modern materialism wasn't getting in the way. And yet we know that these stories are stories. Some of them are legends, some of them are history, some of them are myth, some of them are true, some of them are only spiritually true, they're not factual. And there's all of that to say that, that the proof that we're really interested in, is our own lives, is the ability that we have to actually experience directly these things that we're talking about. William James called it first-hand religion, right? It's the direct religious experience as opposed to second-hand religion, which is the religion we learn by reading other people's books, by reading scripture, by listening to a mediator between us and the religious experience, which could be a shaman, a priest, a nun, a monk, something that is mediating that between us and the direct experience. And we do what the person tells us, as opposed to, or more, maybe more importantly, than our seeking the discipline and the, well, admittedly, sometimes hard work of having the direct experience, which is both a direct experience of the communion of oneness, and also the direct experience of being co-creators. We know we're co-creators because we co-create, not because we read a story about somebody who we think might have co-created. Unless there's stories of people, current people, who are currently doing it, which is why we have testimonials, which is why it's so important to share what we call our TSRWs. This shit really works. When we use the spiritual principles and we have a demonstration, we want to share it, not because we're patting ourselves on the back, but because we're grateful for it, and it's an actual demonstration for someone else. But it's a real person, it's somebody whose story can be corroborated, and it's something that can be shown, can be talked about in our current experience. So all of that to say, please feel free to read the sections I'm skipping. If this is not to take this away from you, if you have a strong and deep connection with Christianity, with the Hebrew Bible or the Christian Bible, not one single thing wrong with that, not one. And so there's a couple of paragraphs in here or sections in here that's the what shall we say, the proof, the rationale, all of those sorts of things. So I'm going to pick out a couple of paragraphs, and then we're going to carry on. So we are skipping to page 158. And the other thing is that some of this is really redundant from the section on prayer that we just spent a lot of time on. So I'm also skipping that redundancy, because Ernest Holmes is nothing if not redundant. Ooh, man. Okay, so on 158, this is the second to last paragraph in the section available to all. Since faith is a quality unconfined to age or station, it may be ours today as much as it has been to anyone's at any time, right? Because he's just given us a whole bunch of Hebraic stories that show us that people were living by faith. We are not going through a hard, now this is the piece that is really worth stopping and listening and hearing. We are not going through a harder time today, a longer or darker night than has ever been experienced before.
Amen, so it is.
If only, it only seems darker because we have lost faith, the beacon of light. And so this is really, true. And when we see that, I can remember working on my thesis at the University of Dallas, and I remember, and I'm trying to think of what class it was in. It doesn't really, it might have been my art history class, doesn't really matter. And we were given a little paragraph, and it said, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Kids are no longer listening to their parents. War is everywhere. There's famine in the land. There's drought. Politicians are, lying, cheating bastards, yada, 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 yada. A little paragraph. And then the teacher said, so this is from a newspaper. What newspaper do you think this is, and when do you think it was written? Right? So a whole bunch of people said, the New York Times, or, it's this year, or 10 years ago, or the Nixon era, or this or that, right? Or during World War II, or, and all of that. And so everybody had their opinion, and then the instructor said, well, let me just tell you, this is actually from a Roman newspaper from 50 BCE. That means 50 years before what we consider the common era today. Right? And so, unfortunately, history does repeat itself over and over and over again until we learn the lessons that are there for humanity to learn about its choices, about the way in which we are treating each other, the way in which we are treating the land, the way in which what motivates us, how we're living. On the other hand, the other side of that coin is, if you ever want to look up a really powerful YouTube little vignette, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's progress. It's world progress over time, and a newscaster who was tired of all the doom and gloom and about how awful everything was. This was about 8 years ago, maybe 10. It was before the pandemic. Took research over the globe using basic numbers, poverty, mortality, women's education, moving into more healthy environments, more food, all of what we would consider progress, right? Not necessarily how much money everybody has in the bank, but general progress. And then created this fabulous chart. It's so worth doing. And starts at like 200 or even 500 years ago. And isolates like little bubbles or regions or countries, little bubbles that show like where they were. And then plots it over time, over the last 200 to 500 years. And you begin to see that over time, everything has gone up. Now, granted, right, some countries have gone up higher, but they also started higher. Some countries still aren't, they're still, right, but they're higher than they were before. And I get a fabulous newsletter called Fix the News, fixthenews.com, highly recommend it. Of course, it doesn't come out of the US, fixthenews.com. And it talks about the countries in Africa that have eradicated malaria in children. It talks about how the huge percentages of people just in the last 5 years who have been lifted out of poverty, world poverty, and no longer under the poverty line. A massive amount of work that's being done for women's education, that's being done for climate change, how much in the last 5 years India and China have leaped ahead of us in the grid and EV cars and all of that. The use of renewable energies, they're now so far ahead of us when 5 years ago they were so far behind us, right? And all of this, and it's all this lifting. It's all this lifting that is the outpicturing of the infinite, generic reality of life. Life is always for life. It's always seeking to evolve and express and grow, and it's actually happening. It's actually happening. So we are in no darker a time. My mother was born and raised and lived during the Nazi Germany time. It was surely dark, no question about it. It was awful. She watched people disappear off her street. The SS was moved into her house because they were subtle resistors as a family. And so, dark times over and over appear because we have forgotten, we forget how it shows up in the world when we behave outside of alignment with our spiritual truth. So I really was inspired by this sentence. Since faith is a quality unconfined to age or station, it may be ours today as much as it has been anyone's at any time. We are not going through a harder time today, a longer or darker night that has ever been experienced before. It only seems darker because we have lost faith, the beacon of light. And what that faith is, what we have faith is not a faith in something outside of ourselves, but a faith in the power and the principles that we are learning and using, that we are engaging in, remembering who and what we are, and that we are not victims of the circumstances unless we choose to abdicate our responsibility. And one of our responsibilities is to learn universal principles, to learn what it is to be in alignment with this trajectory of life, and then over and over and over again make choices that are in alignment with that. Right? Our own personal choices, the choices that we engage with in the world, the way in which we speak, act, and operate in the world, always in this place of choice, deciding for the light, even when it feels dark, deciding for the light, even when it feels impossible, deciding for the light, even when it feels stupid or Pollyannish or, well, look at all these facts out there, right? Deciding for the light. And I think that is one of the primary definitions of faith. To decide for the light, even when it appears dark. To decide for the truth, right? To choose in alignment with life for life, in alignment with the reality of peace and beauty and joy and abundance and wholeness, to decide for that, even when it doesn't appear to be present, right? That's the ultimate definition, it seems to me, of what it means to live in faith. So we're going to go on to page 159, visualizing faith. Visualizing faith. In order to have faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. Even if it doesn't look like it. Somehow, and all is well maybe at the universal level, even if it's not all is well in particular areas. All is well in the universal level that humanity is awakening to itself. So that's, in order to have faith, we must have a conviction that all is well, that life is for life. In order to keep faith, we must allow nothing to enter our thought which will weaken this conviction. Ooh, man, you want to talk about discipline? Ooh, man. So, faith is built up with belief, acceptance, and trust. Whenever anything enters our thought which destroys, in any degree, one of these attitudes, that to that extent, faith is weakened. And who's in charge of that? Me. What I take in, what I expose myself to. Now, this does not mean spiritual bypass. This does not mean I pretend it's not happening. No. We look at the fact and we announce the spiritual truth. These facts that are happening, this is not in alignment with life for life. This is not humanity's best way of being in the world. Just as we can announce the fact about ourselves, ooh, that was not the most conscious way to behave. Right? I slipped right back into some old patterns or whatever it is, right? We get to see and we get to announce truth. To have the conviction that all is well, that life is always moving toward and for life, and to keep it is to not allow anything to weaken that. If you want more about that, that's going to be my whole talk today. So let's stop there. Let's talk about all of this that I've put forward. You might answer the question, what is your source text? Where do you go to get your deepest spiritual inspiration? What is your source text? And how do we decide for light when we don't feel like it? when we're mad or hurt or in judgment or appalled with everything that is going on and seriously upset about things, which we have a right to be. It's not about not being upset, right? So, and what does it mean to have and keep faith? All right, so various things to tap into. We'll stop here. We'll say good morning to Ryan and everybody who's out there. I see we already have a hand up over here, so we definitely have somebody who's going to talk in the room.
Well, surprise on who it is. Armando.
It's good. It's good. It's all good.
Oh, sorry.
But we're going to let Ryan say hello to everybody.
My impulsive nature just took a hold of me. I didn't mean to call him out like that.
Yes, you did.
Anyway, well, hello to everybody here in the room, and so glad to see, that's not the right word, all the people online. So glad to see your icons for all the people online, and we are glad that you are in community with us today. We know and love that you are here with us all around the globe. And we do ask that right now, we have the engaging, sorry, I'm looking at the chat going, oh, okay, there's a lot of people around the world looking at us right now.
Yay.
So this is the engaging part of our conversation, and as Armando has so eloquently demonstrated, all you have to do is raise your hand here in the room, and we'll pass the microphone around. And for the folks who are joining us on Zoom, make sure to hit the raise your hand icon located down under the More or the Reactions tab, and we can bring you into this space. And along with those who are joining us all around the globe on Facebook, make sure to check in, tell us where you're watching from, and put your thoughts and questions into the chat, and I can bring that into the room as well. So with that being said, oh, one last thing, because I keep forgetting it. Week after week, I was reminded, we do keep the chats anonymous. That way it can continue to be a safe container for spiritual growth. And now on to the man, the myth, the legend. We'll start here in the room with Armando. Go ahead, Armando.
Good morning, Dr. Petra. Just about faith, as many of you know, with my nonprofit that I stated and claimed that I would be going nationwide and I would start statewide. And I keep the faith going. And right now in this administration, I feel like I'm in another pandemic and just so much chaos, and it's impacting nonprofits, et cetera. And so I co-created a model once this immigration and all this stuff, this was happening with ICE and all that. And so I co-created this model, and it just really hadn't taken off yet. All of a sudden, I get a call for South Texas, and people are in fear, not wanting to get out. They're not getting to the clinics. So my model is back alive again. And I'm going to be going to pilot my model in South Texas. I've never been to this area, but I have faith. And my advisor said, I need for you to connect with 3 funders, and they list them. I have no idea who they are. I need for you to meet with the executive director. I need for you to meet with this, and so forth. And I need for you to meet with partners. Like, okay, I've never done this before. And so I put the word out. Did research. All of a sudden, I know the executive director. Oh, okay, I'll make the introduction. And then the other one, I have another call. Oh, well, do you know this coalition? No? Well, let me introduce you. All of a sudden, all 3 funders are already scheduled. I have 3 homes that we're going to pilot. And it's keeping the faith, and even though in the midst of this chaos that it's impacting my nonprofit as well as and impacting everyone, keeping that faith, keeping that discipline, keep believing and trusting, even in the midst of all of this.
Yes.
And for me, my demonstration was that I was able to pivot in the middle of the pandemic.
Yes.
And that turned my entire space around. But that time I had to do it alone because everything was down. This time around, I don't have to do it by myself. I mean, I've always been fully supported, but it's a different way of doing it this time around. And that's what I've learned about faith, and I know that it's going to take. Am I scared? Am I nervous? Yes. Am I going to meet these people that I've never met? Yes. But am I going to lean into my word? Yes. Am I going to lean into all of my spiritual practices? Absolutely. So thank you.
Beautiful. And that is a beautiful demonstration of what it means to keep faith, right? It's easy to have faith when things are going well. Oh, look, I'm demonstrating and I'm manifesting and life is good and I have faith. But then, it hits the fan and we're thinking, oh my God, now what? Right? Now what? Rather than being blown around by the wind, is we dig deeper to keep the faith and to remember that the universal principles haven't changed. I mean, it's that metaphor we've heard since we were probably in preschool. If the clouds are covering the sun, that does not mean the sun is not there. The sun is still there, right? And so despite the time that feels dark or challenging or difficult, that doesn't mean that the universal principles aren't there. And so that's a beautiful way of keeping faith, right? And from everything from that to the medical profession, they did huge studies not too long ago on all kinds of cancer patients, all kinds of cancer protocols, all kinds of things, because they were looking for why do some people survive and others don't, and why do some people go into remission and others don't, and they were looking for some evidence, physical evidence, some protocol, something that they could say this is the thing, and the only thing that they found. People had a positive attitude, and they worked to believe that they were going to get well. They kept the faith. To keep the faith, right? Is it all easy? No. Does it always guarantee an outcome? No. But it allows us to move with life as opposed to struggle and try to figure out how to do it. And what a beautiful example. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. All right, we're going to see if we have other hands in the room. We've got a hand there. Anything we want to talk about online before we stay here
No,
in the
other
room?
than the fact that we got some shy people online, so we'll let them warm up and get some questions.
Yes.
But yeah, let's go here
and I
into
also wanted to say, if you're on Zoom, you could also tell us where you're from.
Yeah.
Just people on Facebook. If you're around the U.S. or in the world, we love to say hello. All right, we're going to
Absolutely.
come here in the room.
Good morning, I'm Shauna. I feel like this spring I moved to a whole different place where it just seems like I'm experiencing a lot of TSRWs. And I realize some of the contributors is not just, practicing, but paying attention. And I think I'm paying attention. That's what Armando talking about sort of made me think about. I feel like I'm paying attention a lot more to what's showing up in my life, but also what I see showing up in other people's lives. And so in those areas of my life where maybe the manifestation has taken a longer amount of time, or for some reason I label it as more difficult, I've started saying, well, it's as easy as the previous manifestation I've already had, right? Or it's as easy as like, well, if Donna and Luce and Pam can do it, I can do it.
Yes.
And I don't know what I know that's shifting my mindset. It's just that paying attention. Yes. And I've always tracked my wins and I've always had gratitude lists, but something has completely shifted. And the TSRWs are happening enough that I still get surprised. And then I go, oh, no, it's as easy as finding my parking spot.
Yes.
And it's just helped me more. And then, the other thing one of the commitments I've had is I want to be the light in my family, my life and my friends and family's lives, especially around our current political world situation. And the other TSRW for me, it just happened with a very close friend yesterday morning on a walk. She was in a really, really sad place about what's going on. And she had lots of evidence. And at the end of the walk, she was in a way different place.
Yes.
And that's a blessing to me.
Beautiful. Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. And that's a beautiful sort of synopsis of why I skipped the things about, Enoch and Moses and all of that in the Hebrew Bible and all the demonstrations of faith. Because what really is empowering is when people we know are having their TSRWs, they're having the experience, and we're not an exception. And we can see, well, of course, if that can happen for someone else, it can in fact happen for me. Not to rob them of their joy or to say, oh, well, right, we can have that too. But that's why sharing testimonials, sharing the way how we get through a challenge or a darkness. And I remember having the startling and really upsetting revelation that once I got on the spiritual path, it was not going to be a long, steady uphill climb into nirvana. And I really thought, so when are all the problems going to go away? It's going to all be perfect because I'm perfect and spirit is perfect and everything was going to be perfect. It's well, yes, and we actually live in the space-time continuum, and that is there are limitations to that. There's the impact of the human consciousness, what Ernest Holmes calls race consciousness, of all the biology, all of that, which we actually are moving to no longer allow to control us. But until then, right, stuff does in fact happen. It does actually rain. And we do actually stub our toes. And things do happen. It's going to be a lot less made up stuff. And it's going to be a lot less stuff that we attract out of old and false beliefs. And then we can share those and we can borrow from people's experience and we can give our light. I really love that you said that. And that is another beautiful opportunity to experience what it means to walk in faith. Thanks, Shauna. All right, so I think we have something online, and then we've got two in the room here, 3 in the room.
And we
here.
have a couple
Okay.
hands
right there.
raised
Start
here.
right behind you, Armando, right there. Okay.
And we have a couple people online.
Okay, well, let's go to online, and we'll just kind of bounce back and forth.
Sure, sounds good. So this question came in. It says, I know the truth, but there's still a part of me that is angry. I wake up angry sometimes, and I do not think it's menopause, LOL. I remember things, and I am angry. Although I know I have good in my life, I read and talk to myself to try to fix it. Any ideas?
Let's see. First of all, anger is a completely appropriate response when boundaries are violated or we feel injustice is being done. So there's actually nothing wrong with being angry. The challenge is when we're only angry. We have to feel our feelings. Absolutely have to feel our feelings. But following up with that, we then have to say, and how am I going to hold this? How am I going to be with it? Because we know that then being angry tends to cause us to be outwardly focused. The minute we're outwardly focused, they're doing it, we have put ourselves into a bit of a victim position. No, the question is, what am I going to do? What am I going to do in consciousness? What am I going to do with my words, my actions, my money, my choices and decisions, right? Because we want to allow our anger to be a place of power, not a place that drags us down and causes us to then move into the victim position. Because we're not. We are absolutely co-creators. And so that anger can be used as the energy to know that's not the spiritual truth. No, that's not the spiritual truth of humanity. I'm going to stand for humanity's truth. I'm going to stand for the truth that life is for life, and it must work out for good. I can't see it. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know how long it's going to take, but by God, nothing less. am I going to focus on? But there must be a way through all of this, right? And that's when we lean into the universal law. The universal law knows how to do it, even if I do not have a clue. And especially when I don't have a clue, I'd lean into and trust that the universe is managing the universe. The universe, 13.8 billion years of creation. It's managing from the subatomic particles to the quasars and black holes and everything in between. On the level of universal macrocosmic, it knows how to do everything. And so over and over, we put the end result in mind and we say, do it. That's where we're going. And we lean into it. And so the more that we can allow our anger to provide energy, but focus that energy in a positive way, we are adding light. And we're adding consciousness to the collective consciousness, which is changing things, right? And then the last thing I would say is then to make sure that you're feeding yourself as well things that show you that it's working. Show you that things are being done. Show you places where good work is being done in the world, right? Because otherwise we just keep collecting evidence about the thing we're angry about. And then we keep being angry. It's like getting a bruise and then pushing on it. Is it still a bruise? 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 Oh my God, it's still a bruise. Why is it still a bruise? Oh, let me say one last thing. Probably say this in the... I might say this in the talk, but if I forget. So we're having exactly this conversation on the minister's listserv. It's fascinating to me. And a minister that I really have huge respect for, Bonnie Rose, she always writes something really that's intriguing and interesting to me. And so she was writing and she said, it reminds me of the Buddhist story about suffering, because the question is, should we look at all of this? What if we turn away from suffering, and is there really suffering? And then we have this anger on the other side. And so she said, it reminds me of this Buddhist story. And the Buddha taught, you must acknowledge that there's suffering. And seeing suffering and experiencing that, like those beautiful girls we lost in the flood, the 200 people we've lost in Texas, right? And to feel the suffering of those families. The first arrow of suffering is that experience, that response, right? The second arrow of suffering is when we take the arrow out and we continue to poke ourselves with it over and over and over and over again. And I thought, oh my gosh, wow. Right? So we take the arrow of suffering out, not to turn away from suffering, but to bring our light to the outcome that we're seeking. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, we have a comment in the room. Say your name.
Oh, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Nice to hear. I was so into what you were saying that I don't even know if I can remember what I.
Oh, okay. Well,
I do. Okay.
Okay.
I do. I think I do. It was just that what came up for me in the little reading and talk today is that when I would be in the dark night of the soul or in a dark place, I am like, okay, I need to have trust. I've got to have trust. I've got to get there. I've got to get there. And I wouldn't get there. And I'd even be madder because I finally realized through being here over and over again and hearing things, I thought, I kept thinking I have to feel that trust to have that trust.
Oh, yes.
And I realized from here that, wow, it is just a choice.
Yes.
If I make that choice and I practice to be in alignment, with the truth of who we are, or
Right.
I am. That if I practice that and I continue to just practice that, I don't have to feel that to get to that place. I usually do ultimately feel,
Yes.
that it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's really freed me up to know that I can start out. It's kind of like what you said about the suffering now that I think about it, where you put the arrow in and you do feel but rather than take it out and put it in that the love and the healing,
Yes.
remembering, learning to remember.
Yes. Beautiful.
Be in the alignment of the truth. of who
I
we are.
love what you said, because we're always so busy to wait. I'll have faith when I feel it. I'll believe it when I see it. I'll trust when I know it. No, it's exactly the reverse. Trust means you step out even though you can't see what you're stepping onto. You just decide, right, to move as if you trusted, as if you felt it. And sure enough, as the Buddhists say, the path rises to meet our foot. It is the act of stepping out that causes the universe to respond. And we can begin to, and then we learn to trust. Trust is not a feeling. Faith is not a feeling. It's a decision. It's a way of engaging in the world. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really beautiful.
Can I just add something?
Sure, just take the microphone so the
mic.
people online can hear you.
Well, we define faith as believing in what is unseen.
Exactly. That's exactly right. We believe that it's there even if we can't see it. Okay, we do have one more in the back. Do we have something short on a line?
Well, we've got a couple of minutes, so
Okay. You manage it however you want.
let's go. Well, this lovely lady has been waiting for quite
Please.
some time, so
Good.
we'll go
And then we'll come to time
online
in the
and
back.
then just have a chat afterwards.
Yep.
'Cause Dr. Peters does stay around for a little bit for those who are here in the room. So, Anita, do you want to join us real quick and just say your question or comment?
Good morning, Anita.
Good morning, and I'll try and keep it brief. So the question you posed is, what is your source text? Well, you know me, that it's no surprise that the Bible very much is one of my source texts.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I actually have two source texts. The Bible, having come up in Judeo-Christian heritage, but then Science of Mind
Yeah.
is my other source text. And so here's my encouragement for everybody, is if you've come up in Judeo-Christian heritage where, the Bible was part of your life, read what Ernest Holmes says in the Science of Mind text, because what it did for me is it gave me a new way
Yeah.
to view and interpret what I was reading in the Bible.
Yes.
And so it enhanced my life over the last 38 years of being in Science of Mind to have a new appreciation from where I came from and what I learned as a kid growing up. So
I love that. Yes, thank you, Anita. We don't have to throw out our source texts by any means, right? And so the books that Anita's talking about, one is called Words That Heal Today, which is basically Ernest Holmes doing an exegesis on exegesis, which is a pulling out of an interpretation of the teachings of Jesus. So it's specifically the New Testament and specifically the teachings of Jesus. And then the other one is the Hidden Power of the Bible, which is lots of all the way from the Old Testament into the New Testament, lots of stories or phrases that you might be familiar with, and he's doing the same thing. There's also Thomas Troward's book, Bible Mystery, Bible Meaning, which is a beautiful metaphysical understanding, because we really understand that the teachings of Jesus was teaching this, what we are teaching. And he was bringing out the hidden mysteries into reality, and really trying to bring it forward, but in a, right, and then of course whatever was done with the teachings of Jesus, right, is sometimes challenging. There's also the beginner's Bhagavad Gita by Reverend Dr. Edward Viljoen. For those of you who might have an Eastern tradition as your source text, or as your childhood religion, or just if you are particularly interested in it. And of course, we can always go back to Sri Aurobindo's The Life Divine. You can go into the mystics, the Christian mystics. You want to blow your mind at just seeing new thought in pure Christianity, go read Meister Eckhart. The writings of Meister Eckhart. Totally blow your mind. And so it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And so again, it's not to take these things away if that we find them valuable, but to always remember that we're looking for our experience firsthand and other people's firsthand experience that can inspire us to our firsthand experience. So yeah, that's really great, Anita. I'm so glad you said all of that. So, I guess the one thing we're going to tell you is that we do have our a very special weekend coming up at the end of the month. July 27th, we have Reverend Marquita Pierre McAllister coming. She is our candidate for our associate minister and the successor to me at the end of the year. So she'll be doing the Science of Mind class, then she'll be doing the talk, and then she has a fabulous workshop. And we're looking for your feedback and input and just giving ideas about how it resonates with you so that the selection committee can parse all of that with they'll do like a 4-hour interview with her on Saturday. So there's lots of things to put together for them to make a recommendation to the core council for that. So that's coming up at the end of the month.
Yeah, and I actually just want to chime in here too to get you guys aware of a couple classes that are coming up and an experiential. So we have Visioning, which is going to be coming up July 14th, Mondays. It's online only. So no matter where you're at, you can get off of work, join Carol Merlo.
He just gave you a PhD, Carol.
I just gave you. You are now granted a PhD. I do that to people.
She's an amazing instructor,
Absolutely.
too. She deserves it.
Absolutely, she does. And it's based on the work of Dr. Michael Beckwith. It's a visioning class, so you get to walk through the steps of visioning a new life or unfolding something more into your world. Also, I have a little dirty secret I'd like to share.
Yes.
It's getting announced later in the celebration as well, too. So as many of you know, I love doing art. I love doing art events. And it turns out the AV team is just as silly and goofy as I am. And so we've come together to create an experience that will be happening. Yep, Jim's saying what's up because he's been a part of our tests. Thank you, Jim. The hair will grow back, don't worry. But we want to invite the community here at CSLDallas to come and join us. It's going to be August 1st. It's going to be a multi-sensory event incorporating yoga, meditation, and mind mapping exercises because we bring the science of mind into our experience as well, too.
And beautiful visuals and music.
Absolutely.
And all kinds of amazing things.
If you love that kind of stuff, you're going to love it. So it is limited to 20 seats, but heads up, we do also have an early bird special going on right now. So if you want to check that out, make sure to head over to CSLDallas.org right now, over to the event section on to August 1st and check out more information there. And we will be having a couple more later on this year too. So if you don't get a chance to get into this one, we got some coming up.
Yeah, all kinds of things. Good. All kinds of interesting things coming up.
And
I want to make a huge shout out for what's happening in August. Tracy Brown is creating this amazing August experience. Every Sunday will be something really different, really focusing on different practices and experiences, since that will be my vacation. And
it's going to be a really special time.
It's going to be a very special time because we really are moving into lots of more experiential kinds of things. We've got sacred music concerts coming up and art events and all kinds of things. Because, again, we want to have the firsthand experience, right? And so we need the food for our brains, but then we also need the opportunities to have the firsthand experience. So yeah, stay close, stay connected. We love you. So happy to have you all here in the room and online. And we'll see you when we see you. Bye for now.